Hey guys and girls, it is Birchie here, and Birchie is back. Apologies for last Tuesday night. I abandoned everybody. I was ready to go live, and then I fell sick. And how I felt sick is quite funny because people will laugh when I tell them what happened to me. I even laugh myself. Last week I was going to do the live with Ridwan, and then I texted him and I was like, bro, my arms, I can't move my arms. I'm sweating, I've got a migraine, and I knew that I had come down with the flu. That flu is that word with the numbers on it, and I got sick. So I didn't want to make anyone sick. I Ridwan that I was having on, and I was out of it for basically 48 hours or so. Back with Tuesday Night Live. We're meant to have Ridwan this week, but he messaged me beforehand and said that he is also sick today, which I haven't seen him since last week, so I didn't make him sick, which is, hope he gets better shortly. So I couldn't leave you guys hanging with a Tuesday night, especially on interest rate day. And here we are with the 12th almost straight interest rate increase, which is very interesting. I can see everyone hopping online, so welcome aboard. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of people, I've given up on predicting the interest rates as I was doing for the last 12 years or so. Every Tuesday I'd give the interest rate feedback before it happened, and I was like, bang, bang, bang. I had a very good run on it. Yes, rat's tail check, rat's tail still there. Hopefully it'll go very shortly. Got a couple of kilos to lose on my weight. For those of you that don't realize, I was trying to find a reason for why I should cut off my rat's tail. I hate it. But it's there. It's taken 2 years to get to this long. So I said, when I get under 100 kilos, I'm down about 14 kilos, been going to the gym, put a bit of muscle. I didn't realize how bloody fat I'd become over the years. Like before, and I was like ripped years ago, and became fat. So I'm waiting until I get to 100 kilos. I'm 6'4", hands like a dinner plate, and so it's only another 2 kilos or 1.5, 2 kilos. So anytime shortly, it'll be coming off. We've had 12 months of interest rate increases. A lot of questions that I'm assuming that you're going to be asking is when will it stop? What are my thoughts? What are my predictions? I'll get straight into that. But I did say for a very long time that we would come down to negative interest rates, that we would come to a neutral interest rate, which we went down to 0 as a cash rate. Basically, it was 10 basis points. And I don't believe that the system is set up in a way to safeguard the banks from it going negative. I believe that they've got themselves into a position to go to that level. A few weird things have been happening globally, not just the last 3 years, but they have been for quite a while. So when we look at interest rates, I said very clearly, go back through all my videos, I never said that they will not go up by more than 0.5%. I said that they can't go up by more than 0.5%. Very big difference, right? First thing is, they can't and they won't. You can't run a red light camera. Well, you can, but if you do, the light goes off and you get captured and you get fined and all that sort of stuff. So what is the outcome of them doing this, and what will be the ultimate end position of that? I think they've gone way too far with this. I think that they're just pushing the button and seeing how far they can push it before the big car accident happens. So on the note of why I'm not predicting interest rates anymore, is it because I've got them wrong? I did get it wrong last time it went up. And that's because the data that has been input and has worked for me for about 17 years of me researching this data the fundamentals are off the table, and it's pushing them up for the fun of it. So I was basing off bonds and where the bond yields were going globally and in Australia, as well as looking at different tools like the 30-day interbank cash rate futures. It's funny that they now use that in all the media as well. They never talked about it beforehand, but the correlation is bang on. I'm not going to come out and tell you, hey, interest rates aren't going to go up again, because as far as I'm concerned, wherever, I'd said in many times at the start of this year, someone just wrote here, RBA, the real bunch of arseholes. Look, it's all in good place, and I can say, put my hand up that yes, all of my debt that I have has gone up in interest rate terms. So just like any of you guys who'll be sitting there, when people say to me, oh, Birch, you got lots of money, you got lots of cash and all that sort of stuff. I don't have cash, I just have cash flow. But whatever problem, if you have a good day, my day has an extra couple of digits on the end of it. If you have a bad day, my day has a couple extra digits on it as well. So looking at interest rates going, yes, they affect me, but there's things that I do to sort of push up my rent, and I want to pass it on, which I'll get onto today. So yes, costs have come through. Is it all bad that interest rates have gone up? How can you capitalize on that? I think that's very important. It might have some commies out there that are watching and going, how dare you say that, Nathan, my rent has gone up and all this sort of shit. Well, it's a part of the market. You should have planned yourself better on that front if you're going to make those sort of allegations. So, and on that, I just thought about the other day, I saw something funny on the internet. This is really funny, right? And people sometimes watch my videos and like, Birch, did you say that on a financial services sort of Facebook page? I'm coming out with pronouns now, folks. I want you all to refer to me as landlord. That's my pronouns for everybody out there. Everyone seems to be putting these things out there, so I just thought, let's join into that. Anyway, for all those people with the purple hair come and attack us all about us laughing about rents going up and our income increasing with this. The other pronouns could be cash flow. That's the other ones out there. Anyway, let's start the day off by looking at strawberries. This is a post I saw online. It says here, that's $1 for a strawberry. It looks like Coles, I think it is. Coles have those tags. Fucking $10.90 for a punnet of strawberries. $10.90. $10.90, huh? I was at the shops the other day and had to get blueberries. You can see that there's blueberries beside it on the other side. And I don't buy my produce from, Woolworths and Coles anyway. Occasionally, if you really get stuck. I had to pick up some blueberries, and I buy them, maybe 10 packets of blueberries at the time. And I know what they've gone up to. And my mum, she was at the shops and she goes, oh, I'll get them. And she picked them up and she goes, Nathan, would you believe these are like $8 a packet? I'm like, yeah, that's the price they normally are. Actually, she paid $8 and she got 2 bananas and a packet of blueberries. And I'm like, yeah, I'll pay like $6 from the farm to come in, right? So when you look at the cost of food, right, we are in the hyperinflation. I made some videos going back 5 to 6 years ago. You can find these videos on YouTube. There's a folder called Raw and Uncut. It does sound like a porno title. People have told me over the years since. But it's not. It's on YouTube, not RedTube. It's called Raw and Uncut. Someone made the comment in a post one day. Go and read that. I talked about what is happening now in the market out there. I called it the global financial depression at the time. And, it was probably a little bit before its time, but it's happening today. But they've really only got 2 ways around this, right? They can either print money and get through the depression, or they can tighten things and take everything off the table. They're trying to tighten everything as much as they can, but they can't, right? Eventually, we will see this explode and they will have to reverse monetary policy. The higher that they go with these interest rates, the further that they're going to have to come down to fix it up, right? Just think about it this way. I noticed when I got my glass of water today, I used to drink and, have a bit of a fun life. I don't drink or anything like that. someone bought me like glasses and Blue Label and all this different stuff. But I saw this glass it was a Scotch glass, I guess you'd call it, and I thought I'd put my water in there today. But let's assume we want to go out and have a big night out, right? We're going to have a big night out. We go and have one drink, right? One drink, you can have a good time with the drink. Two drinks, you have a good time, right? Depending on the size of you and how much you can consume, like I reckon I could drink a whole bottle, and that's what I stopped drinking from, because I drank a whole bottle in 2 hours and I was a bit sore afterwards. So I just thought, don't need a drink. Not that I drank much anyway. But if you have a big bender, right? You have a big bender. You have, I don't know, bloody 10, 20, 30 glasses of scotch, right? 30 standard drinks of scotch. It's going to take you a while to overcome that hangover, right? The action that you are taking will have a counter reaction to you, right? And so you need to think of every time you're taking action, every time you're taking a drink of your scotch, right? What is going to be the outcome of that, right? You're putting toxins in your body. And then just keep doing that, whether it's over 30 in a session, whether it's over 50 drinks in a session, whether it's over 5 days straight on a bender, you're in some party, in a music festival, I don't know, never been to a concert, funny story. But let's say you've had a 3-day bender, right? Someone has a 3-day bender, that come down that they're going to have is going to be far greater than, someone having a red wine over dinner or 1 or 2 drinks over dinner, right? It's a very different outcome. So here we are, we've had a big, massive party, an orgy of cheap credit, let's call it. We've had credit at 0% interest rate. We've taken out trillions and trillions of dollars worth of debt. I played that video last time that we went live, and that video was the Peter Costello video, where he said the country's taken on $1 trillion of debt, just here in Australia, right? $1 trillion of debt, and that $1 trillion of debt at 1% interest rate, is $1 billion a year, $10 billion a year. Sorry. Now that the interest rates have gone up to 4%, there's going to be $41 trillion, probably $45 trillion a year. So the government is now spending an extra $35 billion a year. This is flowing on to every area of the economy. So if you drank 100 standard drinks of scotch, I think you'd die probably. I don't know. I've never Guinness Book of Records and seen how's the biggest bender that someone's had before they died, or the most amount of drinks you can consume before you pass out. But I would have to think that there becomes a point where you can't physically consume it all and you start vomiting or whatever. And, if we're thinking about the economy, how many stiff drinks can we take as an economy before everyone starts passing out and everyone's getting too intoxicated? So we've had a massive bender, right, as an economy. We've had cheap credit. We've had as much fun as we want. We all feel rich. We're all happy. We've all got Gucci bags and cool cars on credit and all that sort of stuff. But we're at a point now where they're trying to say, okay, we're going to take the drinks away. You're going to go to rehab, right? We're going to go to rehab. And everyone's going to have a bit of, sit on the ice about it. The problem is that now that it's occurring, there's a ramification that's going to come. What's that here? I don't know about that, Charles. We're at a point now where the economy can't sustain this, right? If we're looking at the government debt can't afford it. The governments are going broke. All the financial institutions out there can't afford it. All the companies on the stock market. How can a company on the stock market that used to get their biggest expense, most companies, I think their biggest expenditure would be their debt bill or their interest bill. Now their debt and their bonds, we haven't even seen the effect of bonds rolling over, right? If we look at the US debt at the moment, right, they've just had to roll over some debt, and And I don't know if I've got it on my list here to really talk about that today, but we can go into it another day. The US has $31.6 trillion worth of debt. And they were about to default this week. And that means that the economy would have crashed massively over there, right? And because the US dollar is the base currency of the world, that means that everything that's attached to that would collapse as well. So they had to do something to keep this Ponzi scheme alive. So they've increased the debt ceiling. I think they pushed it down the road by 2 years. So basically saying you have to pay your credit card of $31.6 trillion. You can't afford to pay your credit card, and you still need to use, $2 trillion a year additional on top of the credit card. They've now had that credit card interest increased from 10 basis points to 410 basis points. So that's 4,000% more expensive to hold that credit card. But they've pushed it out, whatever they've pushed it out to time-wise, dollar-wise, and whatnot. Problem that we're going to see is that debt now is going to very quickly spiral. Right? Instead of costing $2 trillion a year additional to that, we're going to see it go to $4 trillion a year. And as we start seeing these debts pile up massively, because the only way that these entities, I'm going to call the US an entity, Australia an entity, let's call them a corporation for the way that they operate, for their exercise. I'm not going down sovereign citizens, don't worry about that, guys. But let's just call them companies for exercise. They're taking their debt. The only way, they can't keep the income coming in quick enough, so they have to take more debt to keep themselves liquid. So these debt bills are going to rise at a much more rapid rate than what they have any time up until now. And it's got us to a really, really bad place. So, my thoughts on it, I'm still very excited, very optimistic by it, because I know at some point, something is going to, I was going to say explode, but explode will come on the other side of that. I'm talking more of an implosion. So an implosion is a big, massive debt default, someone missing a payment, something blowing up, which will send shrapnel everywhere. We've seen all the banks starting to blow up, Credit Suisse. Like, you've never seen banks dropping like they are in 2023. So, who remembers that ad as a kid? It was the Oz Lotto truck, right? You see the Oz Lotto truck, and they added all the millions of dollars in it to deliver to people, and then they put the extra $100 note on the top of the Oz Lotto truck, and then suddenly the wheels blow off the truck, and all that. I think we're at that point now where they're just adding just that little, all it takes is this gust, the extra strawberry, right? Just add that little strawberry on top of the expenses pile for most corporations, entities, people out there, and it's going to explode. If we look at our household debt in the country, I think we've got like $3 trillion worth of debt or something. Every household in this country's debt, let's call it $3 trillion for the fun of it, but the government's got $1 trillion worth of debt. So our mortgages, right, all of our mortgages combined around the country would be, a third of that is the government debt as well. But when you start adding on how much debt does each of these corporations have, where does the liquidity come for those corporations to stay alive? Where does everyone get their funding from? You start seeing a picture there, which is something has to give. And, we'll get into that. So I'm armoured today with a shit ton of articles, and I think people will get excited when I read through articles. I throw them around and all that. But yeah, let's get into it and see where we go. So today's wow, I didn't actually go through it because I'm at a point now with the interest rates that I'm at, like, how high are they going to rise and keep rising, right? So today they've increased the interest rates by 50 basis points. So 0.5%, the interest rates have gone up. So yesterday, when I was looking at the cash rate futures, which is what I've looked at for a period of 17 years roughly, because I got stuck with interest rates locked in and fixed interest rates at like 8.65%, and I wanted to know how money was going to work, so I never got stuck into that. But let's look at like yesterday. So they were no increase. It showed no increase. If I had have put my hat on like I had for every month for the last 15 years worth of putting out those interest rates going up, interest rates not going up sort of thing, and getting it right every time, I would have said yesterday that interest rates would not have gone up. But I don't trust it now because the whole thing is broken, right? The fundamentals are completely off the table. So the quicker that they go, it's like they're racing to blow the system up. They're racing to blow up the financial markets, right? And when they do, they're going to come back and say, oh, well, look, great, we've got inflation under control, we've done this, all our fiscal policy is caused us to get ourselves into the black again, but without all the damage it's caused along the way. So, yeah, let's go and read their excuse for this, and then give you my thoughts on it. Some further tightening of monetary policy may be required to ensure that inflation returns to target in a reasonable time frame. It ain't ever fucking coming back. They can't control hyperinflation, right? So let's just take this humble strawberry, right? Let's see there's new people logging on as we're talking. The humble strawberry for $10, right? Business needs to make more revenue to pay for their goods, right? Their staff costs have gone up, the staff are saying they want more money, they're getting on strike, whatever the case may be, right? So their expenses have gone up. The commodity prices are going up because the oil company goes, well, we don't want to sell oil unless it's at a certain point, so we're not going to sell it to you unless you're going to pay it, right? So then there's pressure on different parts of this supply chain. And as I said beforehand, the electricity goes up, the coal prices go up, so commodity markets have a big play on that. The plastic that builds the package for the strawberries goes up, etc. They're just going to keep increasing prices, right? So they think that they're going to contain inflation, but all they're doing is adding more on. So if you look at a household on 100 grand income, let's just use 100 grand income as an example. The household with 100 grand income now with a $1 million mortgage has gone up from, I don't know, let's call it 3% beforehand to say 7%, right? That's 30 grand a year interest rate to 70 grand interest rate. That's an extra 40 grand a year worth of interest rate that someone has to pay for. If it's me and most of you guys watching, we'll just put our rents up and go, here's some cash flow for us, right? But if you're owning that property, you have to pay it yourself on your income, then you're stuck with paying that cost. So when we look at the cost of people's household expenditure, that has gone up, right? And it's going to be passed through the economy. It's not going to be held by the person that has the debt. The businesses that have taken on debt, right? And I'd have to pull out the numbers. Let's say we've got the $3 trillion worth of household home loan sort of debt, consumer mortgage debt. We've got $1 trillion worth of government debt. There would have to be a couple of $1 trillion worth of business sort of corporate debt, commercial loans, commercial agreements, BBSWs, which is a bank bill swap rate, which is basically a premium that they put on top of the cash rate. So if you go to the bank and you're a business and you're a large corporate, you'll say that the bond is 10 basis points, will pay a 1.5% premium over the top. So the interest rate would be 1.6%. But then if the interest rate went up to 4.1% and you had a 1% premium, now the interest rate is 4.2%. So then the strawberry company, Coles, whoever's taking out that debt, the cost of funding has gone up. Then now they're going to add it and attach to all the cost of the things that they do, which pushes up the inflation. You're starting to see the picture here. Like, this is how the hyperinflation starts, right? This is part of it. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I'm happy, right? Because a lot of people are going to be squashed with inflation, right? But I'm like, shit, all that ridicule when people wrote comments on the videos 5 years ago and said, you're off your head for talking about a hyperinflation and all these sorts of things. It's actually happening, right? And I think it's validation. That's the word I'm looking for. It's validation that we're going through that point at the moment. And I don't think by any means this is a hyperinflation, but this is a precursor to the hyperinflation that we're heading into. So prepare yourself, get yourself ready, and be aware of it. And just remember, it doesn't last forever, right? 2 years ago, everyone was like, oh, right? And that passed, right? And here we are, where everyone's like, oh, this big party is going to keep going on, the alcohol's going to keep flying, things are going to happen, whatever. No, there's people with a hangover now because of the actions that they took and not planning and not having strategy, etc. And this time that we're in, right, they're in a tightening cycle, right? It's only so far that they can squeeze it before everyone dies, right? And when I say everyone, I mean, the governments, the corporations, everything on the stock market and all that. So we're at a point now which we have to be right at the end of the cycle for this. A couple of background talks as well. We've been invited to some banks here at Zinger Finance. We've been invited to some of their banks, and I don't like these economists, but it's fun to see what they have to say anyway, because they always get it wrong. You can only jack up on the rant once a year. With the with the banks, what they're coming in, their economists now are coming in saying that interest rates will change policy at the end of this year. So if you guys recall, I said that in May 2022, middle of let's say a year ago, I said that I thought we'd see the end of financial year around now would be when we see the rate cuts. It didn't happen. Sorry for those of you that put a bet out there. I know Patrick from my office did a bet with his family to say that he would, I think it was a case of beer, that rates would cut by now. The banks are now starting to say that it will happen around September to October. But how sharp did they fall, right? We've just seen the rate go up by 0.5% today, where they've been going up 0.25%, right? So they're actually really ramping up the rate hikes. But what happens if they put the rate up this month and then 2 months' time it falls back down, right? You just got to remember that the rates aren't going up to stay up forever. When we get into a hyperinflation scenario, which I think could be the next few years, it's later on in this decade, a hyperinflation in a currency, let's just go back a few steps, right? I keep referring back to these strawberries. $10 for a fucking pack of strawberries, right? $10. I remember getting 2 punnets for $3 and stuff like that a couple of years ago, right? So $10, $10.90 to be exact, right? What has happened at that point is the currency has lost all value, right? It's got no value at that point. So if an interest rate went up to 100% interest increase, right, but your strawberries were selling for $1,000 a packet, and it might sound stupid, right, that strawberries could go for $1,000, but tell me, for $10, it doesn't sound stupid to you, and this is in our little short span of our lifetime. I remember my mum telling me, my mum's 80, and my mum telling me that my dad used to earn $2,000 a year, right? 50 years ago, 55 years ago. And when you break that down, my dad was earning, let's say, the equivalent to the 80 grand a year job. He was a mechanic. He was like a RACV, RACQ, NRMA, one of those sort of guys. He did that for 20 years. And $2 grand a year would be, say, 80 grand a year now. That's $40 a week. You go to work and you earn a packet of strawberries, right? That's how far over 50 years of a lifetime has been washed away. But here we are looking at 2 years, 3 years. Interest rate, the strawberries have gone from 2 punnets for $3 to 1 punnet for $10.90, right? I'd be more concerned, I've said this for a very long time, I'd be more concerned about this because this is real, right? Your debt isn't real. Understand that. Your debt isn't real. The debt isn't real. So the illusion of the wealth is real, right? The illusion of the wealth. But it's the actual whatever you're spending your cash on, right? So when interest rates go up to 100% interest per year, which is a possibility in a decade or so, I believe that we're still you'll know when interest rates are going to go stupid, because strawberries at $1,000 a punnet, a Big Mac meal at $1,000, your annual salary at, I don't know, a monthly salary at $500,000. It'll sound good, but yeah. I see a couple of people commenting about interest rates by 0.5%. I'm just looking here. Unfortunately, I'm recording this from my phone. I haven't been paying too much attention on it. But it does say here, the heading here from the news website is that it went up by 0.5%, which I'm not even looking at the news. I'm not even caring about the little RBA things that they're putting out now. So it says here 0.5%, but it says here 4.1%. So that would be, Google it. So I can't Google it because I'm on video recording you guys. So this commie has come out and said inflation in Australia has passed its peak, but at 7% it is still too high and will be some time yet before it can get back in our target range. This further increase in interest rates is to provide greater confidence that inflation will return to target within a reasonable time frame. He acknowledged that high inflation makes life difficult for everyone and that it was damaging to the economy. If inflation were to become entrenched in people's expectations, it would be very costly to reduce later, involving even higher interest rates and a larger rise in unemployment. One thing to understand as well, guys, when they say that inflation is under control, thanks guys, I'm seeing here definitely 25 basis points, so sorry to scare everyone. It just the heading here on the news site says 50 basis points. Just a little news snippet there, it says 50 basis points, that's what I was going off, but it doesn't actually state in the article. When they say inflation is under control, right, they're saying inflation's only 7%, right? But anything at the shop hasn't gone up by 7%. It's gone up far greater than 7%. But let's say it's gone up 7%. Let's say it's gone up 10%. When they say inflation is under control, that just means it's only gone up by 3% now, right? It doesn't mean that it's gone back down to where it used to be, right? And that's a really important part for everyone to understand, because your money has lost its value forever. Just understand that your money has lost its value forever. You can't go back and purchase what you used to be able to pay. Everyone's saying 25 basis points. So yeah, sorry to scare you all. But yeah, whatever the interest rates they do, they have to reduce them. They can't keep them this high. We have not seen, everyone's worried about, what about when all those fixed rate mortgages coming off, right? Well, what about all the other 60% of the mortgage? There's 30% of the mortgage which are fixed, which are coming off in the next year or so. But what about the other 60% that are already screwed, right? That have gone up by 400 basis points, literally 400 basis points in a year. Crazy shit. But the interest rate, it's just goes to the things that I'm thinking, right? Lots of cool parts to it. We're at a point where it's breaking point for the mortgage cliff, right? I'm seeing the mortgage cliff, right? The part that I'm thinking about, right? So everyone's worried about this mortgage cliff where you've got 30% of the mortgages, let's say $1 trillion worth of debt, which is due to expire. I don't give a fuck about that, right? What I'd be more concerned about is what about all the bonds that are rolling over? Look at how the market works. Look at how these things operate out there. The US is refinancing $32 trillion worth of debt, asking to take on $50 trillion worth of debt, right? $50 trillion. Well, that's their proposal anyway. They're going to have to, right? What happens when you take on $50 trillion and then you roll it over from 1% interest rate to 4% interest rate, right? This shit just keeps adding on. So I wouldn't be worried about your home loan, right? It's going to benefit, right, from all the other bits of dodginess that's happening out there in the financial system. I'd be more concerned about what is happening to the country's debt, What's happening to all the other, national debts that are out there? What's happening to all the companies that your super fund is invested into on the stock market and in any other sort of stock market around the world? So that would be a much bigger concern of mine, because those debts, when they come due, they either have to default or they have to roll over their debt. They're going to roll over their debt in a new bond product. That bond product is not an interest. Your interest rate has gone up over 1 year and it's going to reduce over the next year. And you're going to be like, oh, it was a tough year, right? Whatever. But when those bonds roll over, they have to lock that debt in for the next decade. Please understand that. They have to lock the debt in for another decade, which is really fascinating in my view. Just goes on to say, this commie said, firms report that labour shortages have eased. Yeah, because everyone's out of a job. Job vacancy advertisements are still very high levels. Financial comparison website Finder found that the rate hike will set Aussies back by an additional $1,200 every month. Aussies with an average loan size of $577,000 will be spending $15,000 more per year on their mortgage compared to what they were in April last year. That's a huge amount of extra money to be forking out of your mortgage. He warned that 4 out of 5 Australians are reducing their spending to cope with rising costs. So let's say that you're a shop, just a local shop, selling off your strawberries, right? And then you've got less people coming in to buy your strawberries. So you go, well, my profits are getting impacted. I have to push my prices up. It's going to have a negative flow-on effect to your end position. So let's have a look what else they say. Some economists welcome the move amid warnings that Australian inflation rate is much higher than it should be after more than a year of mostly back-to-back interest rates. This pink-faced dude, he's an attractive person. Right? Look at him. He's the guy out there. He said, just remember this guy said, right? Just remember this guy said that we would not see interest rate, all these special gizmos and secret tech that you and I don't have, right? He came to us and said that interest rates will not be increasing until 2024. Right? This pink-faced dude, right? So here we are in 2023, and interest rates have gone up from 10 basis points to 410 basis points. And he's going to make you feel special shortly when he tells you, oh, the interest rates we've done a good job. Interest rates are coming down. It's like, well, there's a bigger problem out there, right? The bigger problem is that the government debt, anything attached to a fixed term bond for a 10-year bond product that has to be renewed in the next 6 months or 12 months or has been renewed in the last 12 months, whoever's rolling over those bonds are going to be left with a big grenade in their hand. So let's go on to read some more of these articles. Some of these articles actually talk a lot of sense. So this one here is from Sydney Morning Herald. Catch 22 squared. The RBA's inflated dilemma over interest rates. This one here was my favourite. I read this the other day and I sent it to my team and I said, I want to talk about this one tonight. Readers of the classic novel Catch 22 understand the absurdity in the heart of the story. According to Collins Dictionary, to be in a catch-22 position means that you're in an impossible situation because you cannot do one thing until you do another thing, but you cannot do the second thing until you do the first thing, right? A catch-22 situation was illustrated with the case of the bombardier who was clearly crazy and should be grounded from flying, but to ask to be relieved of duty showed he was sane. The Reserve Bank board minutes may not be as well written as Hellier's work, but they also show the tough position the bank finds itself trying to deal with high inflation putting up the interest rates. These guys are so smart. They control the world, they control the governments, they control everything that happens in your and I life and everyone else around the world. But they didn't realize, or did they realize is the other question, right? They didn't realize over the last 5 years of having 0% interest rate policy and keep reducing interest rates over a decade or 11 years of interest rate cuts, that for some strange reason, they're the ones that can push all the buttons and go print. They didn't realize for some fucking reason that it wouldn't turn out to a catastrophe where there's too much cash out there, and it will blow up the economy like every other cycle has occurred and every other currency has occurred in the last 1,000 years. Kind of sounds a bit of an excuse to me, right? Anyway, the best example of the catch-22 is it increases the interest rates can actually contribute to inflation. So here we are talking about what I just spoke about. Consumer Price Index is a national basket of goods and services. Every year, the Australian Bureau of Statistics reevaluates that basket to see if spending on patterns have changed. Notice what they say there, right? That's why it's called the CPI, right? Because you feel like it is a lot more than what they're saying at 7%. So every year, the Australian Bureau of Statistics reevaluates that basket to see if your spending patterns have changed. So going back 30 years ago, right, they would class meat as a fucking steak, right? And then 5 years ago, they would have got some, coloured hair person that's come in, and I'm not being offensive to anyone with coloured hair, right? Probably need to do that myself because mine's going white. But they'll be sitting there going, oh yeah, I've got sausages and, I've got some lean meat, right? Now, they've got some fluid person, right, that's sitting there with their, this I'll go into it, right, anyway. You've got other thoughts and other messages I could share. But you've got a millennial that's moody, the millennial, as George Gammon would say, that's angry with the world. They stereotypical, generally ABC participant on ABC, would be sitting there eating their Beyond Meat vegan, meat, right? And that's now the staple of it, right? Whilst a kilo of meat is $50, $60, $70, depending on what sort of meat you're getting. $100 if the meat is to be of, good human consumption and not full of chemicals. So the meat has really gone from a 1980s meat to 2000 meat to a 2015 meat. And now it's a Beyond Meat, which is just fake, who knows what you're eating, sort of meat. So when you get the CPI index, they're saying, well, meat cost has only gone up 7%. No, you switched out a fucking leg of lamb for a sausage, and now you switched the sausage to some chemical-filled sausage, and now you swap the chemical-filled meat gunk sausage that you've eaten into a good trendy Beyond Meat. The ABC participant, seriously, they've got like no fringe and complaining, and everyone's the problem, and they haven't done anything. They haven't sat there to calculate things, or it's the world we live in. It's getting shoved down all our faces. But anyway, that's what's happening to the CPI. It is the CP lie. So, yes, I've had my experience with a couple of those ones. The colour of the hair, yeah. Imagine you have $100 a week to spend on everything you need and desire. The ABS reckons we spend about $17.18 of that $100 on food and non-alcoholic beverages. We spend $10.99 on all forms of transport, 10 cents on postal services, 16 cents on books, and $1.16 on insurance. The single last expense, however, is housing at $22.24. This expense has fallen in the past two ABS updates of its inflation basket. The most recent in December last year, the Bureau noted the importance of rent had fallen due to relatively small increase in both the number of dwellings rented and the rent prices. So the other thing that they've taken is that they used to take a mortgage, and then they started getting too high. So then they lowered the interest rates of the mortgages. They can manipulate this data a bit more. But now they're taking rent as an expense, not everyone's renting, so don't worry about mortgages. Let's park that to the side. Let's just go to the rental pool, and that's what it is based upon. And the cost of that, it is absolute bullshit, because they've taken away from the quality of life that you've had. You're never going back to the quality of life that your parents had. You're never going back to the quality of life of 5 years ago. You're never going back to the quality of life of the 1,012 square metre block of land in Sydney. Grandparents had a house with a hill hoist and a red brick house on it, type of life again. So they just keep manipulating the numbers and lying to you with statistics. But anyway, this is a cool article. because this guy's actually calling out for what it is, the catch-22. We all know the situation dramatically changed. Rents are now climbing at their fastest pace since late 2009 and vacancy rates nationally at historic lows. For all the people from ABC that like to complain about things all the time, we had an open home last week here in Sydney. We had the property for rent. It was a 1-bedroom unit. It's down in the western suburbs, and it was $350 per week rent. We had 60 people turn up. 3 applications, three that were notable, right? The 3 notable ones were $450, $470, and $500 per week, right? So as an investor, I'm like, fucking great, right? Keep these interest rates increasing so it gives us the opportunity to push that rent up. We will manipulate the CPI ourselves, right? Because we'll be able to push those rents up. And this is something that is happening. If it wasn't for the interest rates being so high, right? Interest rates going up is short-term pain, right? 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, just strong hands, right? There's so many weakies out there that go, oh, there's so much stuff, right? What happens? We've got massive inflation. Imagine what happens when interest rates drop and all the people that can't afford to buy can afford to buy again, right? So just remembering, we're now in a position, every time the interest rates go up, there's less people that are able to go and buy a property, meaning that there's more people to be forced into the rental pool, right? More people forced into the rental pool means that there's more urgency and competition upon those people, right? And that, someone just said diamond hands, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? Strong hands, weak hands, what side of the field do you want to be on that front? So, yeah, the rents, amazing. Amazing. I can't even begin to explain, right? The outcomes that we're getting. And you saw Chris last time, 3 weeks ago. If you do want to have a review of your rental portfolio, optimize those rents, send my team an email at admin@binvested.com.au. So just admin@binvested.com.au. Send your properties in, a list of your properties, the current rents, location, what the property is. And we will have a look at that position for you and, see what we can do to push up your cash flow, right? If you didn't have inflation occurring, you wouldn't have your rents going up. Just remember that, folks. Yes, it's a bit painful, whatever the case may be, but you wouldn't have the position of all these rents increasing, meaning that your cash flow is getting better. When your rent goes up from $350 to $500 a week, you can buy 10 more packets of strawberries, baby. 10 more packets of strawberries at $10. There we go, 15 packets, right? $10.99. Let's call it 14 packets, whatever you want to call it, right? I know I'm going to have someone there to get me on a technicality. Inflation doesn't discriminate, right? You might get discriminated for not wearing a mask. You might get discriminated for not wearing certain flags on your outfit. You might get discriminated for other things. But inflation doesn't discriminate. If you've got the assets that can be inflated away, you've got the cash flow that can be inflated away, that's where the funds are. Going back to our article, on Monday, the ANZ CoreLogic measure of affordable housing found a median income household needs to spend 30.8% of their income to service a new rental property. 30% goes to rent. That's the highest proportion since mid-2014. And what happened in 2014? Interest rates, right? And when that happened, we saw the rentals hit a peak. They kept going up, right? From 2008, 9, 10, 11, probably 2011, 12, 13, rents went all the way up, for example, in Sydney and a few other markets. And then when the interest rates came down, the rents plateaued, but because those assets became very cash flow positive, everything in Sydney was positive cash flow, then the property prices dragged up and it caused the next boom. So we're right on track, right? It's just a cycle, but the cycle's getting more, separating and becoming unaffordable and out of the range of most people. So by pushing up interest rates, RBA is actually pushing up the costs incurred by landlords who are carrying the mortgages on their properties, while some of these costs will be shifted on the nation's taxpayers via the deductions that they claim. The most immediate impact will be on the tenants who endure an increase in their weekly rent. sorry in advance, sorry not sorry, right? I fear for tenants, right? I feel for tenants. I fear and feel for tenants, right? But, it is tough out there for them because we manage thousands of those properties and we do see the pain and we try our best to come with equitable outcomes for everybody. But, it is a benefit to the landlord side. The minutes of the RBA's May 2nd meeting noted the pressure on the property market because of higher population growth. Can't make this up, right? Blame Russia, blame China, blame a virus, right? Blame all these different things. Now they're blaming it on migrants coming in, which they seem to want to get 700,000 new migrants in. Imagine throwing them in the mix, right? Ordinary builders and investors would respond to population growth by building more homes. But the bank's higher interest rates aimed at curbing inflation and making it tougher to build those homes. Incentives to expand residential building had been impeded by high construction costs. The increase in interest rates and construction delays, including because of labour shortage, May 2 minutes say, the incentive to build more homes is being dented by the increase in interest rates. The bankers often mention the importance of both wages and productivity growth, but as a recent minute say, it's difficult to get productivity growth in a government-funded services. It's communism, right? Communism at its finest. Apart from talking about productivity growth, how does RBA get businesses and workers to become more productive? It can't directly. Well, it definitely can't when they keep increasing the expenses to the businesses by pushing up their cost of funding, and it also by removing their clients by making them spend their money elsewhere, i.e. their homes and their rent or whatever the case may be. Bankers often bemoan the high hurdle rate set by business to make productivity improving investments in operations. Even with the interest rates in the cellar, businesses were reluctant to borrow money. Anyway, it's interesting at least. I just had a thought about something else, but I've got a mind blank now. It was about, I was thinking, right? Here we are, and this has happened, right? I'm going back to something I said a moment ago in 2008, 9, 10, when interest rates went down and then rents went up, right? It's literally the rents went up. If I pulled out Mount Druitt from 2009, 10, 11, 12, we had an amazing time, right? I was able to quit my job in the GFC because of what happened with the rental market, right? I was able to quit my job in the GFC because the rents got inflated away because the interest rates went up and a few things that happened there. So it goes to show, even though people are scared out there in lots of markets and not spending and buying or whatever the case would be, might be in a recession, you've got 26 million people, you've got all the houses that those people can go and live in, right? All you're doing is either putting someone in a rental side of the house or into the purchase side of the property. And when you push too many people on the purchase side, and the reason why they can be pushed to the purchasing side is because they made it easy to borrow the money and cheap to borrow the money, right? So it pushes demand over that side of the table. When they take that away, it pushes them to the rental side of things, right? And you're putting more people in the rental pool and less properties in the pool, meaning there's more pressure there pushing up those rents. So whichever way that you look at it, you're either having higher rents and your income's increasing, or you're having higher purchase prices. But when you've built an asset base, for all the investors that I've been working with for the last couple of decades now, myself included, when you look at all the properties that I've bought for like $100,000, they're renting for $200 a week, they were negative cash flow at some point, stuff like that. Those things are now worth $800,000, they rent for $500 a week, the mortgage is still $100,000 on them, $80,000, whatever the case may be. It doesn't, that doesn't fit into these figures, right? Because that's irrelevant to what people are doing today. They're looking at if you bought, you rent, how the numbers stack up. So it's important to, I guess, look at, if you've got properties, you feel in the pain, how can you protect yourself? If you don't have properties, you're thinking of getting properties, how can you protect yourself? How can you take advantage of the opportunity? If you haven't got any properties, you can't afford properties, you're stuck in the rental side of things, what can you do to protect yourself? There's all different things that you can do. If I was a tenant today, if I was a tenant and my rent's going up and I know imminent, right? If I was a tenant I would go imminent death to my finances because my rent is being pushed up. I would look at sit there and go, okay, I can whinge, I can go on to ABC, cut my fringe off, shave my head, turn it blue, purple, pink, every colour of the rainbow that I want to do my hair in, and complain. Or I can sit there and go, okay, what can I do? What's at my disposal? In 5 years, if interest rates were cheaper, I could buy something. So if it was me, I would try and find an owner that would do a rental on a property. And so I'll lock it in for a couple of years, but also I'll buy the property, put an option in the property, right? And say in 3 years' time, I'll buy it. Your property's only worth 200 grand at the moment. The only property's only worth 800 grand. The prices are falling. I will rent it off you, pay you stupid rent, but then put an option on the property to say, hey, in 4 years' time, I'll make a bet with myself and be like, I'll find a way to come up with a deposit. I'll find a way to make that happen in that period of time. Because at that point, the rents will go even higher. The prices will go up higher. You'll be sitting there going, oh, I can't afford a property at that point in time. And then you can lock in a sale sometime down the future. So a rent with a convertible lease into it, right? There's all different ways to stack a deal, right? There's all different ways. If you're broke, on my most broke as fuck days that I've ever had, I've still been buying things, I've still been making things happen. Just finding different ways of being able to finance them. So you're not screwed unless you're really screwed, right? And you put your hand up and go, oh, here's the white flag. There's, fighting defeat. But everyone's got options, everyone's got choices and abilities to do things. So anyway, here's another article. The RBA boss gives depressing solution to Australian rent price surge. One person's pain is another one's pleasure. But, the RBA governor says Australians will have to increase the size of their households as rent continues to soar across the country. When rents go up, right? Imagine you've got a recession, no one can afford a Lambo. What do? They go and buy a Toyota Camry, right? They can't even do that. They go and buy not even a Kia Rio now, right? I bought a fleet of cars the other day, and Kia Rios, they stopped making them, but they're selling for 30 grand brand new, right? 30 grand for a Kia Rio. They don't make those small cars anymore because they're not profitable. They're losing money by it. So it's just kind of funny. So if we're in a world where rents are rising, what would be the case? Would they be saying more people move into a bigger house? Or would they say, maybe I'll go to a 1-bedroom unit or a 2-bedroom unit. I don't need that extra space. I'll save myself $100 a week, whatever the case may be. Affordable housing. I've said the whole time I've been making videos for the last decade and a half, right? The last 14 years of doing this, right? That affordable properties, it's a recession-proof solution. It's not just that it's a recession-proof thing, it's when the shittest time hits the fan, you have the maximum outcome and nothing else can compete with that. So, affordable housing is the real answer, and everyone's looking for that. And if you were to happen to be investing into that, you would have had that. So, someone just asked me, how much would your Bentley be worth today? Birchie, I don't know. I sold my Bentley a couple of years ago. I think they're still worth around the same money. I bought a 500 grand Bentley, maybe 600 grand it was worth. I didn't buy it for that. It was the only second-hand car I ever bought, right? I bought some old second-hand cars when I was younger, but I bought it, I think, for like 250K. I drove it like I'd stolen it for like 4 years or so. I got annoyed really when I sold it because I hit a pothole. I hit a couple of potholes around where I live. I live on farms and stuff. And it's actually when I bought a Ford Ranger. And they asked me, are you happy with your Ford Ranger Wild Track? And I was like, yeah, it's just to not dent my car and scratch my car in my driveway, right? Because of rocks and pebbles and stuff. But every time I'd hit a pothole, it would cost me like 30 grand in damages, and it was just annoying. So I got rid of it. And I think they're probably worth, I sold it for like high 100s, and they're still worth like 160, something like that. So just to answer that question for you. But yeah, anyway, let's get back to this article because this one here's a fun one. The appearing before a Senate estimates hearing on Wednesday morning, Philip Lowe warned not enough homes are being built to keep pace with population growth, driving up rents and exacerbating the cost of living crisis. So just think about it this way, right? Interest rates have gone up. People can't afford to take on that debt. Inflation has gone up. And the more that they keep increasing it, the more that the builders are having to put up their prices, the more builders that are going broke and dying suddenly. And the thing is that there's less and less stock coming to the market. So you actually have more demand here, and more pressures that are pushing up for that to occur. So the more pressure that there is, the less that they can build, the less output they can have, the more migration we need to have, and the more, fuel that's being thrown into this fire. So the reopening of the international border, return of international students and skilled migrants is forecast to increase Australia's population by 2%. Are there 2% more houses? No, he said. We need more people on average to live in each dwelling. The population increase comes at a time where vacancy rates are already at record lows, placing further pressure on an already squeezed market. He told Hearing Australia's preference for more space as they continue to work from home and population increases as the main contributors to driving the dramatic increase in rents. Oh, fuck. It's so funny. I'm going to reread that line again. Commie, pink-faced dude, right? Where is he? The attractive dude that we were just looking at. This guy, right? The gobble dog, right? He has come out and said, Australia's preference for more space as they continue to work from home and the population increase as the main contributors to driving up the increase in rents. Or is it that you increased inflation of holding a property and therefore they're passing the costs on to the end user? Anyway, this guy's more fucking funny than ever could be. Dr. Lowe, I love how they call him a doctor, fucking Dr. Dickhead. There we go. Said the central bank is forecasting rents, the single largest component of the consumer price, to grow at about 10%. Right? So just go back a sec. I actually said the last article that they took out your mortgage expense in the CPI and they swapped it in with rent because rent was cheaper option. And now it's the largest component of the CPI, which contributes to like 30% of our household, will go up by 10%. Right? So if they think that inflation, if they think that inflation is going to be stopped by pushing up interest rates, it just goes back to solidify the things that have been saying, that they're causing the problem, right? They're causing the problem. But the point where something blows is where the fun's going to be. We're not there yet. I think we're so close, right? There's no liquidity out there in the market. Matt just said the doctor of doctoring the books. They should call him the chef economist, not the chief economist, the chef economist, because he's good at cooking the books, right? He goes, it's very tough, he said. Very tough. Very tough. I guess it would be tough in his position because he's fucked. The economy's fucked. Whatever lever he pulls, he's going to kill people from financially and cripple parts of the market. So it's at a point, the only way to let this through is to inflate, is to lower the cost of spending, lower the cost of the currency to be printed and just inflate and let the inflation run rampant. And that is the next cycle. When they drop interest rates, when we see the first interest rate cut, we're going to see the start. It'll be like, I'll get my big fucking bell that's in the back of the office and go ding, 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 right? And that will be the start of hyperinflation. That will be when it does take off. So he goes on to say, some people are experiencing bigger increases than that 10% figure. The bigger issue here is supply and demand. The vacancy rates are so low. No, what you've done is you've made it you've made it too fucking hard for anyone to get a mortgage now, dickhead, right? Dr. Dickhead Low, right? You've made it too hard for the banks to service people to get loans. People can't afford to buy the property, and people don't want to sell their property because they're seeing that inflation is eating their cash away, and having cash is trash, right? And what they're doing is they're pushing a lot more people to have to rent instead of being able to buy, meaning there's more people in the rental pool, less people buying those assets, and that's where the problem is, right? But anyway, I digress, right? Let's watch the TV. Hail, fucking Dickhead Low, and and all these crony mates. Anyway, He said this housing market is the most salient example of struggle Australia as capital investment lags behind population growth. Well, I'm sorry about that, but what you've had to do is sprinkle a lot of population growth and migration to try and to pay up all the taxes and pay for the increased interest rate that the government has to pay. So the only way they can pay the extra $30 billion, I'm just putting $30 billion for those of you that didn't watch it last time, $30 billion is bigger than Medicare budget for the year. That's what the Australian expenditure has gone up this year just on interest rate on their bonds, right? So the only way for them to be able to afford that is to bring more people in, tax the shit out of them, and then with them being taxed, they can earn more revenue to try and service their debt that they've got, right? Before the government goes bankrupt. What was that last question? Exactly. As interest rates were lower, people could borrow more, but it's becoming harder and harder for people to borrow. As once again, the cheaper properties and the stuff that we specialize in, recession-proof property portfolios, because the cash flow just keeps increasing. I was talking to a chick the other day, and I think she has like 14 properties now, right? And I'm not going to mention her name, not going to mention anything else about her, apart from a couple of little numbers, right? She's watching, hey, I remember speaking to her, and she works in a very humble job, right? The humble job, I think it's about 70 to 80 grand a year that she earns in her salary. And the job is dealing, like helping people, like not a nurse, but like a nurse, right? Helping people in the community, right? A community worker type person. And she found it a bit tough because interest rates had gone up, and she has 14 properties on a 75 grand income, thereabouts. And I said, look, just let's go through your portfolio. And I said, increase rent, right? And by the end of it, I'm like, fuck, we can put your rent up like 30, 40K a year, right? So that increase in rent pushed her income up. And this ain't someone that's on like a millionaire. This ain't someone that's cash, still spoon in the mouth, anything like that. It's average Aussie person, right? And their rent went up, I think, to about 200 now, 220 grand, 200 grand, 210 grand a year. And I was sitting there thinking, your rent from your assets is now like 3 times the amount of your working income, right? Tweaking that income, pushing up the rent a little bit higher again, waiting for those interest rates to drop in the next year or two, that spread will replace your 75K income. That's literally the power of people's portfolios at the moment. I'll just pull my hair back. It's getting quite luscious and long, and I don't have a plait today, so it's quite wild and adventurous for the rat style. But anyway, looking forward to the day I can cut it off. Right? Solving the housing problem, I think that's the biggest thing we could do. Well, you caused the problem, Dr. Dickhead, because you gave 0% interest rates, you created this Ponzi scheme, gave everyone 50 grand to build a new house and run into a mortgage that they couldn't afford at any higher than the interest rate that was at the day. He goes on to say that we've got to build the transportation infrastructure to support that. Well, you could just, admit that the system of currency is a debt and death paradigm that's been created for everyone to be enslaved, and that might be an honest way of telling people what has happened. Anyway, we might get inflation down for a bit, but all we'll end up later is in the poor, he said. Just remember that. Just remember that line for later. Not declaring victory on war on inflation. It's a war on inflation. I think it's more of a spiritual war, but anyway, it's a different story for a different day. The Reserve Bank governor said he's not declaring victory on the war on inflation yet, and denied that he's engaged in a scare campaign on interest rate. Dr. Dickhead Lowe said he's actually aware of the unpopularity of the central bank's aggressive tightening on the cash rate in a bid to curb persistent inflation. But the RBA boss warned the bank may need to increase rates further depending on what happens in the global economy, consumer spending and inflation expectations. I know the higher interest rates at the moment is very unpopular and is hurting people. I know it's really tough, but the board decisions think of the alternative, right? Let's just say They've put a black and white picture here, so he's not so pink in it, right? But anyway, let's just read that last line a bit. I know it's very tough, but the board decisions think of the alternative. The question that I'd have to ask is what would be the alternative, right? Let's say that they didn't do what they've done right now, right? Well, we would have hyperinflation already, right? We would have negative interest rates. And what will come at the other side of what we're seeing at the moment is going to be that, right? So it's interesting. The bank has lifted the cash rate at 11 of the past 12 meetings, pushing it from a record low of 0.1% and to 3.8% in the most aggressive tightening cycle since the 1980s. The current headline inflation sits at 7%, down from 7.8% in the December quarter. Asked as the battle against inflation has been won, Dr. Lowy said it would be premature. I don't know if that means his sexual orientation, but anyway, it would be premature to say so. We are not going to declare victory until victory is achieved, he told the parliamentary committee. The success for RBA would be inflation returning to its target range of 2 to 3%. He said the bank forecasts that occur by mid-2025. Low jokes about the future. The government ended his 2-hour grilling with a sly smile after being asked by Liberal Senator Dean Smith if the committee would see him for the October round of Senate estimates. Well, perhaps we'll see, Doctor said. The awkward laughter from the Senators Committee. With his term as governor ended in September, the governor's future is up in the air. The government continues to defect questions on whether it will reappoint him. Dr. Lowe has previously indicated he would be happy to serve as long as the government wanted him to, but a recent review of the RBA has put a question mark on the possibility. Well, this is happening globally. This is not this guy's position. He's just getting his orders from his upper management saying, hey, put that little pink guy with his funny looking head in, and he's our little puppet, right? They're just puppets. They're all puppets. That's all they are, right? The question is who's making these decisions? Dr. Lowe was asked about concerns of wage growth. Oh, anyway, I'm sick and tired of hearing about Dr. Lowe because he's, whatever he's going to say isn't what happens. This chart will make you change the way you think about supermarket shopping. Here's another article. Let's read this chart. You have to see this next chart. It blows up the way we understand supermarket shopping. It was published by the Bureau of Statistics and Academic Conference based on information from supermarkets. It's astonishing the supermarkets let this data into the public because it reveals the secrets. The chart shows the price of a certain kind of olive oil and the amount that they show. The blue line is the price. Note that not in dollars and cents, the numbers are set at the highest price it sells for is 100, and the olive oil has a 25% off sales in the line. It shows 50, etc. You can now see the line goes up over time since 2020, as we'd expect, and you can see that the supermarket regularly puts olive oil on special, including 11 times when it was 50% off. So they're lying with numbers once again, right? Lying with statistics. When it does, the sales of olive oil go absolutely berserk. That's the red line. The red line goes up when the blue line goes down, just not a little bit. Usually the supermarket sells maybe $50 worth of olive oil in a given time period. When the oil is on sale, 50% sale off, they sell up to $750 worth. So they call it a 15-fold increase in expenditure. And since the oil is half price, it's actually 40-fold increase from the number of bottles being sold. This is an absolutely incredible increase, and he explains why supermarkets put things on special. Specials are incredibly powerful. They clog the checkouts, people get excited, they stuff their trolley and take things home to fill back in their cupboard. Specials make the checkouts ring. But it raises serious questions. If they sell 20 or 30 times as much the product when the product is on special than when it is not, what is the real price? Sure, most of the time the price is $10, but those times the product is just sitting there. It's not getting bought. Most people buy it when they pay $5. Is $5 the real price of the product? It's the higher the price, just for a handful of suckers. That takes me on to, I was thinking about cars recently. I had to buy a few cars. Not last Tuesday night, but the night before, I actually had a car accident and head on with a cement truck. And my hand went through the window of the car and I got a bit banged up. actually, but I'm okay. It's all good. Could have been a lot worse. I had some others in the car as well, but yeah, with it, I was looking at some cars. I was looking at some other cars for other things as well, some fleet cars and stuff like that. And when I was looking at the cars, I was thinking to myself, you cannot get a Ford car for like 18 months. You cannot get a Toyota Sahara for like 18 months, 24 months, right? And they're selling them like iPhones now, right? So they've said it's the chips, it's this, it's war, it's Ukraine, it's the flu, it's whatever the case may be, it's China, it's fucking aliens next, it's, whatever. It's climate change, all these things. Why isn't the supply there, right? What are they doing when they're manipulating the supply? And I really feel that this is not normal with the supply output. It's like they're limiting the amount of it. Is it because they know that they're going to get greater incentives pushing more of the green cars? Are they controlling the stock levels? Have things really reverted to where their true value is, which is much higher than what we're paying at the moment? Is a Kia Rio really worth $19,000, or is it really worth $30,000, which is selling for? Is a Kia Rio's value worth $50,000? When I think about it, and you look at the amount of natural minerals that go into a vehicle, it's about $3,000 for it, right? You go pick up an MG for 20 grand or whatever. You're getting a lot of value of mineral in that car, right? You go buy another car, for more, what are you actually getting for your money? So that's the question I was actually asking the other week about cars and the cost of those cars, the value of those cars, where the value is in it. So anyway, all manipulated. This one here is a previous one. This was from, actually no, it says here, house prices, was that today or was that, yes, today before the rate went up. New modelling shows a rate hike today will push the Aussie repayment burden to its heaviest in history, while house prices are tipped to slide. So they're saying house prices are going to slide now. All the economists are coming out saying that it's hard for them to push rates up any further as well. The modelling comes as a sharp increase in house prices was set to wane. Some economists here told the Financial Review that unless interest rates start falling, property prices could also reverse in the next 6 months. That depends if there's new stock coming into the market. That depends if... You've got to look at all these things as well, right? Going back to the start of this year, I did a podcast, right? A No BS with Birchie podcast. I did a podcast on CoreLogic data that had come out about house prices falling and going up, right? As the interest rates are increasing, it means that it's more difficult for people to... what was I going to say? So I was looking here because I noticed that the Facebook got cut for a minute, and then the viewers, some people got cut off a little bit there. So apologies for the delay in this. If you've experienced a bit of a sketchiness in the videos, right? If people can't afford to spend $1 million, right, and they can only afford to spend $800,000, does that mean that the $1 million house falls to $800,000? Or does that mean that the average sale price that's going through is $800,000 and there's less sales occurring at $1 million and there's more happening at $800,000 and the $600,000 properties has got now more activity in it, which is now dragging up that price to $800,000. So these stats and figures that they put out, I see some of their points, but I don't believe in their points because I believe that what's physically happening out there and the affordability out there. So yeah, lots of things come into position. So what else here? Don't want to bore everyone here. There's some article that was thrown in here about someone buying lots of properties. I'm going to leave that one aside. We've got heaps of those stories that we do. We've actually got a few of them going in the media, so ourselves. So you will be seeing over the next couple of months, we'll be showcasing a lot of our investors' success stories and even some of my team will be appearing in the media talking about theirs. I used to do a lot of stuff on TV and newspapers and all that sort of stuff, but I just can't do it nowadays after all the things I've seen out there. But we've got some of our investors being showcased in the media, so I will bring that to you shortly. This one here is very sad, right? This one here is very sad. This one is an article that says nurses and teachers aren't able to afford groceries in the cost of living crisis. So we've got a lot of government workers, which are very nice people, very good people, do very good things in the community out there. A lot of love and respect for nurses specifically. Like, I actually dated a nurse once and she was the loveliest person ever, right? It takes a special person to do that, right? But it's not the highest paying job out there in the country. And looking at these articles, right, it says here, nurses and teachers and even lawyers are now turning up at food banks in Australia because they are struggling to afford groceries as the cost of living crisis mounts, right? That is really, really bad, right? I said this would happen when I said that Big Mac meals would get to 1,000. I think we haven't even seen anything with strawberries at $10, right? Like, strawberries at $10, right? I still can't get over that. But it is a common scene out there, right? And that is going to be something over this next decade. That's why I've talked about having food, water, energy sources, someone just said here, don't expect to see Nathan on Sunrise anytime soon. I should actually go on there for our friend Koshi, as I've been on there many other times. Maybe I'll share one day why I didn't grill the guy live on TV, but anyway. But give him a party. We'll go to the partying. He's partying. I heard he's leaving TV, right? But maybe we'll go to that. We're not these things that we're starting to see now, they're going to get a lot worse. So you want to have control over your own personal, not just your finances, right? The stuff that I talk about, stuff that we talk about business-wise, and we can help you with finances. That's cool, right? But what are you going to do with your finances, right? How are you going to set yourself up so you're not so dependent on the system? If you had strawberry trees growing in your backyard, you don't need to spend this money on strawberries because you're growing your own strawberries. I said ages ago that the cost of food will go up massively. What bills can you cut and what new income streams can you add to your position to go through this time? You've got nurses, teachers, lawyers at food banks. Inflation is up 7%. We know it's a lie. We just talked about that. RBA has surged to 3.8%. That's up now because they've pushed it up. And rental prices have risen across the board. So if I can cut the cost of expenditure like food and stuff like that by having my own supply of that, and if I can increase my income by having more workers out there, i.e. properties bringing me higher rental returns and more income, well, then I know that my costs are going down, my cash flow is going up, and that's why I identify it as cash flow. So, goes in to say, Suncorp's recent research found that 47% of Aussies say that they can't afford to fill their trolley with groceries in the current inflated climate, and 4 in 5 Aussies are actively trying to reduce their food costs. What are they going to do to decrease their food? Are they going to stop eating? Are they going to opt for lesser quality food, right? I'll walk through a Woolworths and a Coles and all I feel is disgust, right? I think about all the toxins and the bad things that are in the food, the chemicals that are in the food, right? But people are forced to eat this due to their budget. It's not cheap. If I cook a chicken, it's like $40 for that chicken. It's a good chicken from a good place without all the chemicals pumped into it. It's not cheap to eat healthy. But yeah, it says here, OzHarvest free supermarkets located in Sydney's Waterloo is open 5 days a week, and these days there is a consistent line of people waiting. The not-for-profit organisation gives people struggling a chance to have access to fresh fruit and vegetables and even ready-made meals at no cost. Thanks to the increased financial pressure on Aussies, the market has turned into a melting pot of people from all different walks of life lining up to access to free groceries. You may assume only homeless people and people on Centrelink benefits would need to access free food, but inflation has created a whole new type of customer, the working poor, right? And when we think about the working poor. Who are these people? These are people with $1 million mortgage that have to pay that each week. They have to go get a second job. They can't afford the second job. They don't have 50 hours in their day to be able to be working to keep up and keep on top of their things. Lining up for food, just like everyone, is John, a senior lawyer who was in court on Monday representing a client. He started frequently in the market after he fell on hard times while battling his alcoholism. It was a rude awakening for him. It was very humbling to come into a place like this. I've fallen from lofty highs. I was highly respected. There was money galore, and 2 divorces later, thanks to my drinking, I've lost my money. I'm coming here because I can't afford food anymore. Without the place, I wouldn't be eating, and people here are so non-judgmental, you feel comfortable. That is reassuring, he added. Kat, a social worker at Oz Harvest, has noticed a distinct change in the people who need help in the last 12 months. We're seeing plenty of professional workers, teachers, nurses, lawyers. They feel embarrassed. They're here because they're working, but we say you're welcome because you don't come here unless you really need to. Currently, it is a perfect storm. People are earning what they were earning 2 years ago, but everything is more expensive. They just can't they can't make ends meet anymore. Well, Kat isn't surprised to see people turn up from their work uniforms needing free food. She is absolutely shattered by it. The nurses and teachers that come, they break my heart. They come in their uniforms before or after their shifts, and they just explain that life is tough at the moment, and they are in need of looking for some relief. Specific stories stick out to Kat and drive home the reality of what has happened when suddenly everything is more expensive. Recently, I had a teacher arrive. She was wearing a school shirt and explained that she worked at the school as a teacher 4 days a week. She'd recently divorced, had 3 kids, was struggling to provide for them on the salary. That's pretty sad, right? These things are pretty sad to be reading because, there's a reality out there. And I think it's going to get a lot worse. A lot of people thinking their government's coming to save them or someone's going to save them in some capacity. It's just simply not going to happen, right? You need to take the steps in your own personal life to be able to take control of that. And it's easy for me to say, I'm not sitting here from my, rosary, what do they call it? My big tower, my big castle and saying these things, right? I see it on a daily basis. And obviously in business, like I said, lots of problems that come. In order, I've got hundreds of staff and all those sorts of things. I always try to do what I can to help people out. So, try and help people if you've got the ability to. Help them where you can as well. Government just increased the minimum wage. So, this increases inflation. Exactly. So they put those pressures in place. It's got to come from somewhere, right? This money has to be created. The only person in this country that has the ability to create the money is not even the government. It is that Dr. DH, right? I'm not talking about his wife calling him her dear husband either. Here's a concerning article. This is my last one because I think, let's get on to what will happen afterwards. News.com, technology, its citizens can't. Now China is worried AI may think for itself. Social credit scores aren't enough, so Xi Jinping wants to push ahead with constructing a new way to find dissenters before they dissent. So if you're thinking of committing a crime, i.e. calling someone a dickhead in a political position of power, then it will come and detect that you are having those thoughts of calling someone a dickhead, and it will come and take you away, lock you up in your Tesla and drive you to a police station, whatever the case may be, before you can commit the crime of saying what you're thinking in your mind, right? If you think it's a really good place to be in the world, well, maybe you should just go to China and enslave yourself, right? That's what you should be thinking of. Social credit scores aren't enough. All-pervading censorship doesn't touch the sides. Now Chairman Xi Jinping. It's funny that they call him a chairman, right? Because you call him a president. If you're in America, they call you the president of the company, right? The president of the United States of America. Here in Australia, middle management, you call it a prime minister, right? You are in China, you're the president, prime minister, king, ruler, overlord. They call you the chairman, right? I know you sit in a big boardroom, right? Let's say we've got 100 directors here at B.Invested, right? And then we sit there and go, well, who's the chairman, right? Oh, it's the big boss over there. That's the chairman. It's just funny that they call him the chairman as the head of the state. Wants his country to push ahead with constructing a national security risk monitoring and early warning system to find disincentives before they descend. Addressing a meeting for the National Security Commission on Tuesday, Xi said China faced a complex and grave situation. He warned that officials that they must adhere to bottom line thinking and worst case scenario thinking, and they get ready to undergo the major tests of the high winds and the rough waves and even perennial stormy seas. But people aren't his only problem. He's also worried about the solution he's banking on, artificial intelligence. Anyway, I think we get the picture, right? The Terminator, right? They're making this technocracy that is there to govern us, and everyone's excited. They've got their iPhone, their smartphone, their smart TV, their smart this, their smart that. Maybe I'm not so smart and I like my dumb phone, my dumb devices, because, I don't have, in some cars, I've got cars from the 80s, I've got cars from the 90s, I've got cars that don't require to participate in the system that we are living in here today. So, yeah. Brendan, I love your commentary. Keep it up. I might say it one time soon for you. You just keep watching and keep listening. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, I've covered off on a lot today. Had a few laughs, talked about some facts that are happening out there. It is a tough time for a lot of people. I think we've got to acknowledge that. It is tough for a lot of people. As always, there's going to be winners, there's going to be losers. There's two sides to a transaction, right? Market goes up, someone sells something, the seller's winning because they're selling it for more. The buyer is the loser, right? Things come down, it's the seller that's losing, it's the buyer. So there's two sides to a transaction. Someone's either winning or losing, and that's just the way it works. You want to make sure that you're being able to benefit from this. If you don't have the right amount of income streams coming through, like the more amount of doors and keys and tenancies out there that one could have, the more amount of cash flow potentials that you can be reeling in. So if you've got, if you've got one rod that you're reeling in some rent from, well, then you've got one. If you've got 50, you've got 50 hooks. No, you've got 100, you've got 100 hooks. You've got 200, you've got 200, right? So the more keys, the more doors that you've got, the more opportunities that you've got to bring that cash flow through. Yes, if you've got, debt, then that is going up as well. But how far can you push that? I like outsourcing everything in my life. I like to be able to outsource my expenses to tenants and those alike. So looking at your position, if you are feeling a bit tough, most people just think in a two-dimensional world. They think, okay, I've got this and this is my only option that I've got. There's multiple options. I just said something tonight, which was a real big tip for tenants, actually. And most people probably didn't even hear it. And that's try and put an option to buy your property that you live in from your landlord. And say, look, I'll pay you stupid rent. The market's going to crash, high interest rates. I'll buy it off you in 5 years' time and pay you your price that you want today, your price, my terms, right? Give you 5 years to find out how you're going to make the deal happen. It's going to give you 5 years of locking that price in. So you're buying something in tomorrow's market after it's been inflated at today's price. And you don't have to pay interest rates because the owner of the property selling you the property is, selling you the property, but they have to pay the mortgage over all these years, right? Where if you're paying the rent, then the rent is much cheaper than what the mortgage is. So just a few things to look at, right? When I look at stacking a deal, quite often I'll throw terms in there where I'm getting the vendor to pay for my acquisition, right? I'm not looking, when I do deals nowadays, I don't just look at the price of the asset. I'm looking at all the costs to uphold that asset and how can I shift them onto some other party, and then, pick it up once it's done its thing. And, there's lots of opportunities out there. Just need to look for it, need to acknowledge it, and just keep searching. Like the answers that you want are out there. Just got to keep, finding a way to get there. If you need help, whatever capacity it is, reach out to the team. Some things we're good at, some things we're not. So depending what you're asking us, we get very random requests from people sometimes nowadays. which is cool. I like to be a source of resources for people. But yeah, if there's something we can help you with, there's a link in the description. Reach out to my team. We're still finding great results out there. Imagine a year ago, right? People saying the market's going to crash. Can someone come to me and actually show me a market that's crashed, right? We've had 1 year of interest rate increases. We've got the highest levels of debt. We've got stupid amounts of inflation. People are being pushed to a painful point. But where have we seen a market crash yet? Genuine question. Where has the market crashed? So one thing to look at there, look at where are you pushing up your rents. Yes, your interest rate's going up. I can't help you with that. I'm not the one in responsibility for, I'm not the Dr. DH. Let's call him Dr. DH, right? Dr. DH from the RBA. I'm not the one responsible for printing the money or controlling the money. But that will pass because there's greater, like, yes, your mortgage is important, and yes, your expenditure is important to you. If you're feeling pain at the moment, yes, that is, a pain for you, and it's a genuine valid thing. But if that's for a year, well, then that's for a year, right? How can you protect yourself? How can you take advantage of the situation? How can you get yourself in the best shape in the current market to be able to withstand the storm that you were going through? And what other things out there that are going to affect? If you think that your interest rate is going to hurt you, think about how it's going to hurt the government. Think about how it's going to hurt everybody else on your street. Think about how it's going to hurt everyone else in your neighborhood. Think about how it's going to hurt, every business that is out there operating. Think about all the people that aren't spending because they're saving their money, and what impact that's going to have to the greater economy with recession and all those sorts of things flowing through. So, question there, it says, how long do we need to hold our head above water until payday? Good question on that one. I think that when we start seeing these rate cuts, they may as well start hold up a white flag and say we lost control of our currency, because when they start dropping these rates, we've seen rates go up 0.25%. It's really boring actually now that they just keep increasing them by 0.25%, right? Because they didn't show that it was going to increase yesterday, but I didn't put it out there, right? Someone asked me, she'll probably be watching this. I actually think she saw her before. I saw her on before Mel. She texted me yesterday and asked me, what's going to happen with interest rates? And I said, I'm not going to comment on this. And, I've told her every month what I think is going to happen. And I just don't trust, because the whole system is broke. The model that they're working from is broken. They're just pushing them up for the fun of it. But I said I thought they'd go up, but I don't want to say that they won't. It shouldn't go up, but let's see what happens. And it went up. And when they start bringing that down, whether that's next month, whether it's 2 months, whether it's 3 months, I don't think we can get out of this year without seeing massive starts in our rate cuts. When they drop the rates, I think we might start with 0.25%, and we might end up at 0.5%, 1%, 1%. But these rates are going to come down faster than the Twin Towers came down. So, once again, it's all controlled, right? I'm not going to conspiracy mode there. On that note, where are we looking at? Someone else said here, what are we doing here? I'm trying to read this from a little phone. I second the above comment. What have we got here? I second the above comment. We are making good money and easily covering debt. Now we're going backwards as the buffer is running low. If the rates drop, then we are fine. But if they keep going up, we are not going to last much longer. And that is something that, it's a big sentiment out there, right? Just imagine, what is the asset to the RBA, right? Their bonds and different things that the central bank hold. Who holds these bonds? The banks. We're starting to see the banks blow up now, right? So imagine everybody has to sell their house, just hypothetically, right? And in any market like this, these are very similar comments to what happened in 2011 or 2010 when interest rates went up. The last time it went up was 2010. People were like, wow, the GFC's passed, we got through that. And literally interest rates fell massively GFC, then they went up, and then they fell again, and then we had our big boom that we went through. And when you look back, it was a nil event. But it was painful in that year. And they're very valid things to be thinking. But if everybody's property had to go on the market for sale tomorrow, what would happen, right? Well, then there could be a property crash. It could be a crash of anything. But if that happened, then the assets that the banks own crash, everything it's like dominoes, bang, 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 bang. The whole system will fall over. And it's a very big juggling act. So when I look at this RBA bloke and the situation that he's in, I find it humorous, right? Because they caused it. They're in a big problem, right? I'd hate to be, if you ask me, one job that I'd hate to do, probably being a doctor would be one of them. Everyone goes, oh, you get lots of money, be a doctor, right? And I always think like, you have to look at ugly things and people's body parts that you don't want to see, and they're not at their prettiest point when you go to see them, otherwise they wouldn't be there showing it to you. Apart from being a doctor, probably the next worst one would wanting to be that bloke. He'd be the one of the worst jobs that you want to be at because of the amount of pressure, not just from the community backlash, like we're all whinging with pitchforks, this guy's screwed. But imagine that guy, I could picture, here's summing it up. I started watching The Simpsons because I wanted to see how many subliminal messages from The Simpsons. So I just sit there and have it as white noise sometimes in the background. It's pretty funny how many the subliminal messages that are through there. But you see Homer and he sits there, he's like, duh, where's my donut gone, right? What's this one? Oh, what's this one, right? That is literally this guy at the RBA. Whatever button he pushes, the power plant's going to blow up. And, Mr. Burns upstairs isn't going to be happy, right? We just take the context and think of Mr. Burns and think of the rulers of the bank and the banking system and that cartel. And they probably, very much similar to Mr. Burns there, right? When you look at, this guy that's at the top of the banking system, surname is like a red shield and, he's an old man, looks like him. And you've got this clown pushing the button. Whichever button that gets pushed, something's going to blow up. So it's coming sooner and more imminent. If the interest rates were where they are this month or where they were last month or where they were the month beforehand, it's going to have a similar sort of impact to your budget over a year. But I do believe that the end of it is is rapidly approaching. So we just need to see something blow up. So keep an eye out there, keep an eye on the financial markets, the global financial markets as well, not just Australian financial markets, just global financial markets. And wait, I thought the banks would be it. The equivalents to this Homer Simpson doctor guy from the RBA pushing all the buttons in other central banks around the world have had to go in there and strap sticky tape to the banks, right? And try and keep the fucking banks. Just think about that. The banks are going bankrupt, right? What sort of world is it? So, what will be the date of it? I would have thought the end of financial year, we're here. It hasn't happened yet. But I don't believe it's too far away. And to start hearing that large bank, big four institutions are they've got their economists out there now saying to mortgage brokers and industry professionals that are in those sort of industries, I don't believe what they say anyway, because they're always wrong in a lot of instances, but for them to start talking about to be, their thoughts and all that, they're saying the end of this year, whatever date it is, whether it's this month, next month, the month after that, we're approaching it fastly. So, and I think the turnaround will be a lot more severe than the incline to get to where we are. So, on that note, guys, I noticed that we've been here for ages. I might have a look at a couple of the comments. So someone just said he's not here. The increase is the terminal rate that for how long they can hold it on this trend. Exactly. Someone just said here, we should put all our houses on the market for ridiculously high amounts and they don't sell, take control back. I'd rather I wasn't a part of the thing when it blows up. Exactly. Danielle just said here, very good. Danielle, thank you very much for writing that there. Danielle said here, call the banks and request a reduction in your interest rate on your loan. I just did this and got quite a bit of money saving. So each bank has a retention team, so just call them up and say, hey, you've put my interest rates up. I've been shopping around. Some banks are offering me quite hefty discounts on my rates. What can you do? I'm thinking of changing them over because you guys are just pushing up too high. You don't need to tell them, oh, I don't service at the other bank, whatever the case may be. Just say, what can you do? And get them to come back to you with some options. So a very, very good pointer there, Danielle. And it saves people a lot of money doing that. What other questions are there? Kane says, how many banks can blow up this time? Possibility of a bank run here. Confidence level low. Starting to hear this daily. Yes, there's no confidence in the banking system. Not that many people have any money left anymore. But there's a lot of people commenting to me, and they share with me throughout my journeys of going to the bank and not being able to get $5,000 out, going to the bank and not being able to get $10,000 out. Just simply the banks have no liquidity in them anymore. So just a very interesting world that we live in. So I don't know how many is going to go broke. I think in Australia we're pretty safe, but I'd love to be challenged on that. If the bank does go bankrupt, you don't lose your mortgage. You keep your mortgage and that's the asset of the bank, and they just sell you to a different bank and you go on their books and you pay them the interest, and that's how the story continues. So on that note, guys, I'm going to leave it there. If you need help with anything, you can reach out to the team, 1300 367 925. Click on the link. There's a link in the description. Book in a conversation. Could just be with a conversation. You might be hurting. You might be feeling a bit tough at the moment. Might be needing a bit of guidance as to what options are there to strategically take. Is it a matter of selling something? Is it a matter of reviewing your rents? I've spoken to like 8 hours a day to investors for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And a lot of the calls that I've been having with my existing investors is what can we do to their portfolio to get them through, a tighter cash flow position. And some of them we've pushed rents up, $1,000 a week, $600 a week, $800 a week. It's a lot of increase in cash flow there. So make sure you're being on top of that. And rents are changing by the month, right? By the month. Some areas that I was like, shit, you couldn't get rent there last month, and now it's gone up so high. Just be mindful and be diligent, be on top of that cash flow position. So we'll catch up soon. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. And hopefully we will start to see this guy at the RBA changing the monetary policy. It's going to happen. It's going to happen globally. And when you look around the world, do note that every central bank around the world is increasing their interest rate in lockstep. So you may see something happen in the US or the UK or Canada or somewhere else around the world. And it's at that point you're like, hang on a second, we're seeing the trend of reversal occur. And it's that trend of reversal that you need to keep an eye out for, because just as they've gone up, they've all followed the leader, they'll come down in that fashion as well. So we'll catch up soon, guys. Bye for now.